Demotivatorshow, the internet's most inspirational podcast. Every Saturday morning from 8 to 10 a.m. Support the Windrush Act. Yes! Support the Windrush Act. Yes! Very important. The Windrush Pioneers, the majority were in their prime working ages, in early 20s to early 30s. The 1948 British Nationality Act was an Act of Parliament of the United Kingdom on British nationality law, which defined British nationality by creating the status of citizens of the United Kingdom and colonies as the sole national citizenship of the United Kingdom and all of its colonies. Support the Windrush Act. Yes! Very important. The Windrush Pioneers are intelligent, enthusiastic, skilled, and loyal. The 1948 British Nationality Act gave people from the colonies the right to live and work in Britain. The government needed workers to help fill post-war labour shortages and rebuild the economy. Caribbean countries were also struggling economically, and job vacancies in Britain provided an opportunity for personal growth and prosperity. Support the Windrush Act. Yes! Very important. The Windrush Pioneers were bricklayers, bus drivers, doctors, carpenters, electricians, teachers, train drivers, nurses, municipal workers, etc. The 1948 British Nationality Act, the Windrush generations or pioneers refer to the estimated 500,000 people who arrived in the United Kingdom from Commonwealth countries between 1948 and 1971, located especially in London, Birmingham, Luton, Nottingham, Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds, Sheffield and Slough, and Bristol. The overwhelming majority were born British. Support the Windrush Act. Yes! The Home Office, hostile environment, refers to a range of measures aimed at identifying and reducing the number of immigrants in the United Kingdom with no rights to remain. Many of these were introduced by the Immigration Act of 2014 and 2016 and include measures seeking to restrict illegal immigrants renting property in the United Kingdom, driving, having a bank account and accessing benefits and the NHS. Some of these measures included data sharing between other government departments or external organisations and the Home Office, and the requirement for document checks for those providing certain services. Support the Windrush Act. Yes! The Home Office, hostile environment. The former Conservative government stated the policies are needed to deter illegal immigration. However, the Labour opposition called for an end to the policy, believing it had a negative impact on individual lives, including those with the right to live in the United Kingdom. For example, the Commonwealth migrants who have lived in the UK since before 1973, often referred to as the Windrush generations, who have a legal right to live in the country under the Immigration Act of 1971, being denied access to services and being sent letters threatening them with deportation or detention due to their inability to provide documentation of their right to reside in the United Kingdom. Support the Windrush Act. Yes! The Home Office, hostile environment. Prime Minister Theresa May, Prime Minister between 2016 to 2019, has apologised to the Caribbean heads of government for the treatment of the Windrush citizens and promised that no one would be deported. The then Prime Minister told a meeting with Caribbean leaders she wanted to dispel any impression that her government was, in some sense, clamping down on Commonwealth citizens, particularly those from the Caribbean.
On Tuesday, I met with Caribbean leaders, where I gave an absolute commitment that the UK government will do whatever it takes, including where appropriate payment of compensation, to resolve the anxieties and problems which some of the Windrush generation have suffered. These people are British, they are part of us, they helped to build Britain, and we are all the stronger for their contributions.
Support the Windrush Act. Yes! The independent report into the historical roots of the Windrush Scandal, published on the 24th of September 2024. This report is a response to the Wendy Williams Windrush Lessons Learned Review, which was published on the 19th of March 2020. In particular, it addresses Williams' Recommendation 6, which states that the Home Office must ensure that all its existing and new staff learn about the history of the United Kingdom and its relationship with the rest of the world, including British colonial history, the history of inward and outward migration, and the history of Black Britons. Support the Windrush Act. Yes! Great Britain's shame. The independent report into the historical roots of the Windrush Scandal, published on the 24th of September 2024. The politics of race and immigration became intertwined with one another to the extent that during the period of 1950 to 1981, every single piece of immigration or citizenship legislation was designed, at least in part, to reduce the number of people with black or brown skin who were permitted to live and work in the United Kingdom. The complex history of the British Empire explains why race and racism as political and social issues developed as they did in the United Kingdom. The actions of post-war governments explains the state of play in the 21st century, of which the deep-rooted racism of the Windrush Scandal is a symptom. Support the Windrush Act. Yes! Great Britain's shame. The independent report into the historical roots of the Windrush Scandal, published on the 24th September 2024. There are also more specific lessons to be learned from an investigation of the historical roots of the Windrush Scandal. The Windrush Scandal was caused by a failure to recognise that changes to immigration and citizenship law in Britain since 1948 had affected black people in the United Kingdom differently than they had other racial and ethnic groups. As a result, the experiences of Britain's black communities, of the Home Office, of the law, and of life in the United Kingdom have been fundamentally different from those of white communities. Support the Windrush Act. Yes! Great Britain's shame. The independent report into the historical roots of the Windrush Scandal, published on the 24th September 2024. There are also more specific lessons to be learned from an investigation of the historical roots of the Windrush Scandal. The major immigration legislation in 1962, in 1968, and 1971 was designed to reduce the proportion of people living in the United Kingdom who did not have white skin. The Prime Ministers involved include Harold Macmillan, who served between 1957 to 1963, a member of the Conservative Party. Prime Minister Harold Wilson served from 1964 to 1970, served the Labour Party. Prime Minister Edward Heath served from 1970 to 1974, the Conservative Party. Support the Windrush Act. Yes! Great Britain's shame. The independent report into the historical roots of the Windrush Scandal, published on the 24th September 2024. There are also more specific lessons to be learned from an investigation of the historical roots of the Windrush Scandal. The relationship between the Home Office and the organisation set up to deal with race relations was dysfunctional. In the second half of the 20th century, the work of the various governmental bodies in combating discrimination in the United Kingdom was separate from the task given to the Home Office to reduce immigration. This led to a paradoxical situation in which immigration policy assumed that too many immigrants from a minority ethnic background was bad for society, but race relations policy promoted the idea of racial equality. A message for the Windrush Pioneers and their descendants. The Labour Party's general election promise, July 2024. Sir Keir Starmer pledged a fundamental reset to promote respect and dignity for the Windrush generations amidst plans to prevent such a scandal from being repeated. His plans include appointing a Windrush Commissioner, opening up access to the compensation scheme, and re-establishing the Windrush unit in the Home Office as part of an effort to improve the relationship between the government and the Windrush generation. He accused the Tories, the Conservatives, of having presided over a failing compensation scheme, the disbanding of the major change programme, and a complete unwillingness to learn the lessons of the Windrush scandal. He said, "Justice has taken too long for the Windrush community. A government that I lead won't let this happen again. And where the Tories have dragged their feet, I am determined to get money out of the door to compensate those who were failed by the state." Sir Keir Starmer also added, "The Windrush generation embodies the best of Britain: determination, spirit, public service and graft. But instead of being thanked, they've been badly mistreated. A Labour government will offer a fundamental reset moment for the Windrush generation, with respect and dignity at its very core." So said Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. Solicitor and Windrush pioneer Anthony Brown and Windrush pioneers and their descendants, we're calling for a Windrush Act in recognition by the United Kingdom that its past actions have unfairly impacted on people of African Caribbean descent, both living in the United Kingdom and in its former colonies. It is a recognition that this impact has consequences across all aspects of people's lives: citizenship, community cohesion, education, criminal justice, work, health. The Windrush Act places a duty on public bodies to reduce race disparities for outcomes in their work, as exposed by the government race disparities audit. Solicitor and Windrush pioneer Anthony Brown, Windrush pioneers and their descendants, we are calling for a Windrush Act, an apology for the wrongs that have been done historically by the United Kingdom to people of African Caribbean descent. These wrongs are clearly defined in the Wendy Williams Lessons Learned Review, and it is to the righting of these wrongs that the Windrush Act is addressed. This is not to say that there are not similar wrongs done to other cohorts of people that needs to be addressed by similar legislation. This apology is enacted in law so that it's clearly an apology from the nation rather than a here today, gone tomorrow politician. Solicitor and Windrush pioneer Anthony Brown, Windrush pioneers and their descendants, we're calling for a Windrush Act, reparations for past wrongs. The reparations for Windrush pioneers who are today living with the consequences of Britain's past wrongs. It is reparation that goes beyond mere financial compensation to individuals, but instead provides resources to affected peoples and communities to support them in what they want to do with their lives. To this end, the Windrush Act will establish a Commonwealth Community Cohesion Fund for the development of projects in the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth to tackle disparities and rebuild social economic ties of communities damaged by the Windrush scandals and other historic unfair actions negatively impacting on this cohort. Solicitor and Windrush pioneer Anthony Brown, Windrush pioneers and their descendants, We're calling for a Windrush Act, restitution since 1948, the citizenship of those who arrived on the Windrush and that of their descendants has been repeatedly eroded, particularly by the 1971 Immigration Act and by the current hostile environment. This erosion leaves many within the African Caribbean cohort finding themselves British in all but name, and therefore having to prove their Britishness when it was Britain that eroded and undermined their Britishness in the first place. The Windrush Act fully restores the Britishness to this cohort. Solicitor and Windrush pioneer Anthony Brown. Windrush pioneers and their descendants. We're calling for a Windrush Act, remembering to this day the United Kingdom prefers to tell a story about its colonial past that is often unrecognisable to those who live that past. Only by telling a more honest story about its colonial past can the country show that its citizens of colonial descent are as worthy citizens as any other. The Windrush Act holds the state and its education system to a more honest telling. The Windrush Act remembers what Great Britain meant to those pioneering men and women who saw in the country a set of ideals and values that led them to board the SS Windrush in 1948. We're calling for a Windrush Act. Actions speak louder than words. The time for action is now. Translate our words into action. Contact WD Legal. Website address www.wdlegal.co.uk. Join the campaign to secure the Windrush Act. Together, we will make the difference. Hashtag Windrush Act now. Demotivatorshow. Success is ours for the taking. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's free. Press the like button and don't forget to leave a comment. We are also on Instagram and TikTok. Follow us there too. Mixcloud 2. I'm going to pause there, okay? That's just a flavour of the intro video, setting the context for this interview, most important interview with a remarkable human being. I'm going to hopefully bring him into the studio momentarily. Let's see if we can get the technology to work first time. That would be nice, wouldn't it? There you go. Anyway, let's see if this happens, and let's see if we get it right. Oh, he's arrived! And oh, look at that. It is magnificent. Good morning to you, Anthony. How are you?
Good morning, Councillor Martin. I'm fine, thank you. Yourself?
Well, on this podcast, I'm now the motivator. This is where we translate our words into action, and where success is ours for the taking. You're looking very well, sir. You're looking very well. Thank you for agreeing to return to give us an update on the campaign towards Parliament approving a Windrush Act. I know you've been involved in many meetings and a lot's happened. Okay? But I'm also conscious that whilst there's a continuity between our last interview and this interview, that there are some listeners, some viewers who don't know who you are. Okay. Who is this Anthony Brown that the motivator keeps referencing? And I just started referencing you in our intro video. Who is it? Who on earth is he? What's so special about this person? Oh, right. I know your wife will say something quite positive about you, I believe. But I know your children definitely will. Okay. I can as well. But before I do this, what I've got to ask you to do, Anthony, is just introduce yourself and just say a little bit about yourself. And you may want to add, before you conclude describing who you are, who is your greatest inspiration? Go ahead. Introduce yourself.
I am the co-founder of Windrush Defenders Legal. It's a community interest company.
Yeah.
And we set it up in 2019 in the wake of the Windrush scandal to tackle the situation as we found it, in that there were all these people who the government said that they will offer compensation to, and that they would, help give them back their status, but they didn't provide any support for it. And, the forms are very complicated and so on. And so myself and a number of other people came together and we formed this company. But I had an interest, I must declare, in that
Oh,
I
okay.
myself had been impacted by the Windrush scandal. So
You
I'd
have
come
indeed.
here
You
as
are
a
a
child.
pioneer. Yes.
That's right. I'd come here as a child after my father came here in 1960. I came in 67, age 6, with 4 siblings and my mum. And my father had come, as you rightly pointed out, that all British subjects at the time were citizens of the United Kingdom and colonies.
That's right.
But unbeknownst to my father and me, once Jamaica became independent, or all the other islands became independent, the Parliament here in the United Kingdom took away that citizenship of the United Kingdom and colonies without notice. And so when I went back to Jamaica and stayed for 4 years and then came back again and went to college and wanted to go to university, the college told me that I was being treated as an overseas student. I wanted to study law. I wrote to the Home Office and they said, "Yeah, you're an illegal immigrant.
Wow.
You need to
And just to be
report."
clear, if I may, at this point, it just really is important for the audience to appreciate what an impact that would have had on you. That for all intents and purposes, you're British. Yeah. You leave the country for a few years and come back.
Yes.
And suddenly you are no longer British.
Precisely. Yes, and you're being threatened with deportation. I mean, during my studies of history, I remember when they used to grab young boys off the street and take them into the Royal Navy, and I just
That's
felt
right.
that I was going to be dragged and
Yes.
taken out of the country.
There you are. There you are. Yes.
So obviously it was terrifying. I told all my friends, I went to school with, and my neighbours, and they were thinking, "What's going on? This is just outrageous."
Crazy.
So eventually, we ran a campaign, and we succeeded in that. The Home Office, Maggie Thatcher at the time, the government conceded. They'd come to power, to be tough on immigration. Remember, she was saying, we were being swamped by immigrants, and that was the first hostile environment that I knew. It wasn't Theresa May that began the hostile environment. It was there from we got off the boat. So,
and to be clear, again, if I may, and to be clear, when we say immigration, they're not referring to immigration from France or Australia, or Germany or New Zealand. They're actually referring to immigration from non-white countries. It was a coded word, actually, and the report that we're going to refer to later on in the interview highlight this as a fact. It's in the official report. But can I, before you continue, because you're going to give too much away at this point, I don't give too much away. I want you, if I may, just quickly ask you to answer my second part of my question. That is, who's your greatest source of inspiration? Yeah.
I must say, my
You smile. There you go.
My mother is my greatest source of inspiration. closely followed by my father.
Oh, indeed.
Um,
Yeah, it's got to get that
but
politically
if
right.
you if you're talking about outside of the family,
Hmm. Hmm.
then I would say Toussaint Louverture.
Good for you.
Uh, the,
Yes.
he led the Haitian Revolution,
Hmm.
and other people who have inspired me is
Hmm.
Sam Sharp. He led
Yes. Yes.
the
Mm.
Jamaican rebellion in
Absolutely.
1831. So I'm
Absolutely.
following a pattern here.
Hmm. You're quite
And
right.
then
Yep.
Nat Turner in the US, he also
Hmm. Hmm.
led a rebellion. So
Good for you. Yes.
that's
It's in our blood, isn't
where
it? It's in our
that's
blood,
where I
isn't it,
get
to be
my
rebellious as
inspiration
Jamaicans, huh?
from. Yes,
Oh, I
yes,
hear you. I
yes.
hear you. And
Hmm.
if I may, in that case, and just to take us forward, because clearly the
Hmm.
last time you were here, what we were able to do is to set out, just prior to the elections, I might add, the
Yes.
principles upon which the Windrush Act could be founded upon. Okay.
Mm.
And can I ask you, and I know you can remember, I
Hmm.
think there are 3 or 4 or 5 base principles upon which the Act would be founded upon. Can you just remind us what they are?
Yes, well, as I said, we set up
Mm.
Windrush Defenders Legal Community Interest Company.
Mhm.
We ran surgeries in Manchester for
Yes.
people to come and get help to complete their application forms. And what
Mhm.
we found was that people were being denied
Yes.
their citizenship back, and for
Yes.
various reasons. So we weren't sure about that. So we, asked our MPs for help, and they asked questions in Parliament. We then didn't find that there were satisfactory responses, so we applied to take the Home Office to court in a judicial
Mhm.
review, and we were refused submission. But the reasons that the judge gave was quite important,
Yes.
and he was telling us that we'd applied on the basis that the laws that were being applied to the Windrush generation were racist because we said that
Hold on a
we
second. Hold on. Hold on. You smiled and you laughed. I need
uh-huh,
you to use those words very clear, so it is clear in the
mm,
minds of the audience what you actually just said. Because for this to
yeah,
come out of your mouth and a judge's mouth is profound. Please say again what you
yeah,
just said, please.
yeah. We argued that the laws were racist, and
Hmm.
we had a complicated case
Hmm.
that was based on a case in Greece under the European Convention on Human Rights. So
Hmm.
Article 14, talks about not being discriminated against and
Hmm.
protecting your identity and so on.
Hmm.
Which, when you start to um, take away citizenship,
Yes,
you're then changing somebody's identity. And
that's
we
right.
argued that the way they did it, for example, to simplify it, one day my father was British, and then the next day he wasn't British, but his neighbour still was.
Indeed.
how
Yeah.
could how could how could
Hmm.
that be? And the
Hmm.
way they designed the law meant that my father would be British and his neighbour would still be British. So we said to the court that this was discriminatory, and the judge said, yes, it is discriminatory, but Parliament is allowed to be discriminatory, and there's certain um,
Hold on, hold on.
leeway
Okay,
where people.
I'm intervening again because I could. You're legally trained. I'm just an
Yes.
ordinary Bob, as it were. Okay.
Hmm.
Anthony just said the judge agreed that the
Hmm.
Parliament was being discriminatory. In this
Hmm.
context, Parliament
Hmm.
was being racist.
Hmm.
And we'll get to this use of the word because it's used in an
Hmm.
official report that the Home
Hmm.
Office commissioned, and the
Hmm.
independent report affirms and uses similar language. Go ahead,
Hmm.
Anthony. Go ahead.
So then that led us to the conclusion that, well, we have no business here at the court. We need to go to
Indeed.
Parliament because obviously
Indeed.
they make the laws. The Home Office doesn't. So we then started to talk to the Home Office, and a relationship has developed since then because we took them out of our gun sights and turned to Parliament because we thought, well,
Yes.
if you've made the law, then you need to change the law. And we
Yes.
cited that the part of the law that was really affecting the Windrush generation and their descendants was what's called Schedule 1 of the British
Yes.
Nationality Act. So when I'll give you my father as an example again, when they
Hold on,
took
Anthony.
away,
Again, hold on, Anthony. Again, because you're legally trained, this term
Mhm,
Schedule 1, I know what it means, but I can ask you just to explain for the audience benefit what you mean by Schedule 1. Go ahead.
right. Well, that lays out certain criteria that anybody applying for citizenship must meet. So
Yes.
they must have been in the country 5 years before the application. They
Yes.
have to pass an English language test. They
Yes.
have to pay a fee for their citizenship. They must be of good character. They must intend to make Britain their home. And there's a few others, but there's those criteria. But what we argued was that those criteria don't apply to people born in Britain. And
That's
my
right.
dad would have been in his own country because Britain was
Yes.
his country.
That's right.
It had
Like
been
my
for
father was born
300
British.
years.
I was born British.
It
Yes.
had been for
Yes.
300 years.
Yes.
They'd paid
Yes.
how many billions for us
Yes.
to be free of enslavement? We're the only
Yes.
citizens that have been paid for. So how could we not
That's right.
be citizens?
Thank
So
you. Thank you.
they withdrew this status and then said if you wanted to apply for it or be naturalized, you had to meet
Indeed.
these criteria. So what we were saying was, with the Windrush Act, if you wanted to um, restore the citizenship or put people back in the position they would have been in, then they should have been in they should be in the position of any other British person who wants to apply for a passport or be a British citizen. They shouldn't have
Absolutely.
to be here for 5 years. They shouldn't have to be speaking the English language. You shouldn't ask them things like that.
Yes.
And
Can I
so,
just can I
but to give
ask
the
you?
government its due,
Okay. Go ahead.
just let me make this point. To give the government its
Okay.
due, it said that they didn't have to pay the immigration fee, which is 1,300 and odd,
Yes.
saved. You didn't have to take the English language test because most of us speak
Oh,
English
spoke
anyway. You
English.
and I
Well,
speak English.
yes.
So why are they testing us in English? Probably speak it better than a lot of people born here. But but it still left a lot of the criteria. And that's why you find that there's a lot of people still living in limbo because, if they have to meet the criteria to say that they have to be in the country 5 years before the application, then those that have been locked out, they won't have been in the country 5 years. But the government then brought in this concept of discretion in the Nationality and Borders Act 2022, but we've been seeing that it's not been operating as we think it should. Plus, we're worried that if Suella Braverman comes back at the next election,
Can you
I'm
imagine?
not sure how she would operate discretion. So we want to see that this gets put in statutes. So that's one of the principles of the Windrush Act, that it would disapply the Schedule 1 criteria for people from the Windrush generation. And then the government has accepted the Windrush Lessons Learned review that
Okay.
says in
Now, before you go
recommendation
there,
one.
okay, forgive me. I think I don't want to make. I've got to take us slowly through this because it's.
Hmm.
I'm told that you and I, when at the moment we discuss these subjects, we are talking way over people's heads. I want to be really
Okay.
careful in interpreting what you say. So, first of all, the context. So, I've
Hmm.
cited in the intro video, of course, the 1948 British Nationality Act. Can I just
Yes.
ask you, just for the benefit of the audience, because of course my parents, and indeed your own parents, and indeed myself, were
Hmm.
directly impacted by that act, because it enshrined
Hmm.
in law my Britishness. Can you explain why that is the case in relation to this act, first of all? Can you explain that for the benefit of the audience?
Well, the British Nationality Act came about largely because territories like Australia, Canada, South Africa, the old Commonwealth they call them,
Mhm.
were becoming independent, and so there was questions around. Okay, well, what is the British identity? And before that, we're all British subjects. So a subject is somebody who is pledges allegiance to the king. So if the
Mhm.
king wants to raise an army, he's going to get his subjects to,
Yes.
come on
Mhm.
and join that fight. So if you notice that in Parliament, before MPs take their seats, they have to pledge
Take an
allegiance to
oath.
the king. They
Yes.
still do
Yes.
that in the Commonwealth as well. In
Indeed.
Jamaica, MPs coming into
Indeed.
Parliament have to pledge allegiance to the king. So
Indeed.
as a matter of law, it's still there. But then
It's
you
amazing,
had
isn't it, Jamaicans? Hold on there. It's amazing, Jamaicans. Politicians take an oath to the British monarch and
Mhm,
therefore will be
mhm,
obliged to serve in the armed forces because we are
mhm.
subjects of the
We're
monarch.
still subjects. Yes,
Can you
that's right.
imagine? Which is why the move towards, in Jamaica,
Mhm.
the republic is very much a theme for a future, he says, PNP
Yeah.
government. But anyway, you continue, Anthony.
So to distinguish the status after all these other Commonwealth countries had left,
Mhm.
they created the status citizen of the United Kingdom and colonies.
Yes,
So everybody had that status. So Australians wouldn't have had that, Canadians wouldn't have had that because they were no longer a colony.
indeed.
So that then, and Indians wouldn't have had it, Pakistanis wouldn't have had it because they were no longer colonies. They got their independence in 47. So after 48, the ones that were left were citizens of the United Kingdom and colonies. And then later on, when people started to become, oh, sorry, islands or other territories started to become independent, that status was taken away. And if you lived in the UK after 1971, you
Yes,
then got the immigration law imposed on you. Immigration law only imposed on foreigners. It's not imposed on
yes,
British people. So
that's
that's
right.
why we have problems that we have because we then became subject to immigration law.
Can I just at this point, and just for the benefit of those who are not immediately impacted by the Windrush scandal, to understanding this movement of people, not dissimilar to the European Union, where you have the ability to move from one country to another without the requirements for passports and ID and so on. That was the
Mm,
case for my parents when they arrived in England, invited
yes.
by successive ministers who visited,
Hmm.
in my case, Jamaica, and encouraged Jamaicans to come to Britain. Okay, they
Hmm.
didn't require a visa. In fact, it didn't actually require a passport per se, although it's always useful to have one anyway. Okay, but
Mm,
if you arrive, particularly prior to Jamaica becoming independent in 1962. Okay. Thereafter,
mm.
I know that the majority of Jamaicans had a passport, but nevertheless, prior to independence, you could arrive in this country without a passport because you were already British. You were moving within the British jurisdiction, as it were. That's correct. Am I right, Anthony?
To an extent,
Go ahead.
the main thing was that if you were coming sometimes up to, in the 60s and so on, you need to show that you had work, and
Yes.
people felt that that was a restriction as
Mhm.
well. But
Mhm.
pretty much we could travel around the
British
the the
Empire,
the,
as it
the,
were.
the British Britain and its colonies,
There you go.
but some documentation was needed.
There you go. Can I just take us forward? Because you've now got to the point at which 1971 is the threshold. Can you just explain what happened? What was the act in 1971, 72? That was
Hmm.
the changing of our status, as well, our parents' status anyway. Indeed, my own
Hmm.
statement, I recall at the time. What happened in Parliament?
So,
Mhm.
so all the independence the islands that had gone independent at the time, people who were living here in the United Kingdom. and their status had been taken away. But then the 1971 Immigration Act said that they could have indefinite leave to remain, so they could live here, they could come and go.
That's
But there
right.
were other criteria within the Immigration Act that said if they're out of the country for more than 2 years, then they
That's
would
right. Then you
lose that
lose it.
residential status.
Yes.
So, but the other thing, operative thing that is critical in that it affected the Windrush generation is that they didn't give them any documentation to say that
Indeed.
they had the right to live here. It was
Indeed.
just in law that they could live here, and
That's the
then it
crucial
came.
fact, isn't it? That's the crucial fact. Yes.
It came back to bite us 50
Yes.
years later with the
That's
hostile
right.
environment then.
Yes.
So yeah, and then this 71 Act. If we're now going to move on to the historical roots
Hmm.
of the Windrush scandal. Um,
I will
this
in a
is a
moment. I'm almost there on that report. I just want to make sure the hostile environment is understood by those who are not immediately affected
mm,
by the Windrush
mm,
scandal and what it means. Okay.
yeah.
Can you just describe for
Yeah.
oh,
Just
yeah,
let me
yeah.
just mention this. And
Okay.
so the Immigration Act 1971 came in, and that took away a number of rights that people from the colonies had before. But
Hmm.
before that was the 1978 Act and the 1962 Act, and all those acts started to whittle away the rights of people from the colonies.
I think it's fair, and I might have to declare a fact here that I'm also an elected councillor. Okay, therefore
Hmm.
I am a Labour councillor. Okay, just for the benefit
Yeah.
of those who are listening. Okay, and therefore uh, this particular issue is of particular concern to me. Because of course,
Hmm.
a Labour Prime Minister, in this case Harold Wilson, was a
Hmm.
part of the problem because
Mm,
he served as prime minister. If I get the correct dates up on my screen in a second, he served as
hmm.
prime minister and contributed to restricting our rights. Okay, so of
Mm,
course it started with Harold Macmillan. Okay,
mm,
back in when he served, I believe if I get the right screen up, it'd be nice, wouldn't it? When he was the prime minister, and that triggered the first act of Parliament in 1962. Then, of
mm,
course, there are further acts, and I'm trying to get the right screen up in a second. There are further acts which I want to refer to, but I want to just take it stage by stage because I'm embarrassed that there was a Labour Prime Minister involved in the prelude to the more intensified
yeah, but
hostile
you shouldn't
environment.
be. Let me just make this
Okay,
point.
go
You
ahead.
shouldn't be
Go ahead. Okay.
because this goes before the Labour Prime Ministers. Remember, this is a societal issue, and
Yes.
where did we get all these concepts from of race and so on? It's during the Victorian era. It's during when people were being enslaved, and there was an economic imperative
Mm-hmm.
to diminish, black people so that you could justify them being enslaved, and so industry, business, entrepreneurs, everybody accepted this second class citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
And then coming out of that, decolonization and all the rest of it, you still had people with that mindset that, black people were second class or other or unwanted,
Mm-hmm.
or less than. And so,
Mm-hmm.
Harold Wilson, being part of that culture, he'd be just acting out something that he thought was normal to be, discriminatory against other people. Similar to the Conservatives. So when I was growing up, at every election, the question was who could be meanest to immigrants. They had the Conservatives saying, "Oh, we will be tougher," and the Labour Party saying, "Oh, we will be tough." And they both made laws. So to be embarrassed about Wilson or it shouldn't be. We just should know that now this is our home and what we're going to do about all
Okay.
this mess that it's got itself
I've
into.
accepted, indeed, of course, I accept that as an important observation. And of course, just for the benefit of the audience, the major immigration legislation in 1962, 68, and 71 was the legislation that was designed to reduce the proportion of people living in the United Kingdom who did not have white skin. And the prime ministers directly involved in this are Harold Macmillan, who served as prime minister between 1957 to 63, Harold Wilson, the Labour prime minister then, he served was prime minister between 64 and to 1970. And of course, I recall Prime Minister Edward Heath, who was Prime Minister between 1970 and 74, of course, a Conservative Party Prime Minister. And these three Prime Ministers were pivotal in instituting immigration legislation that were designed to reduce the proportion of people living in the United Kingdom who did not have a white skin. That is a part of British heritage, and it's a part of a report we're going to get onto in a moment, the Independence Report into the historical roots of the Windrush Scandal, which was published on the 24th of September this year. Yes, folks, this year. Continue. You go ahead. You were describing, therefore, now let's get into the hostile environment and what it actually means for the life of people. What does it actually mean?
So the design of these immigration laws, as you just read out, was deliberately to reduce the number of people who were non-white from being in the country. And later on, when we got the hostile environment legislation, which was to say you had to have documents before you could get your NHS treatment, or you could keep your job, or you could get a driver's license. Lots of people, as I said earlier, hadn't been given any documents, and
That's right.
those who travelled a lot, had their passports, probably had British passports, so they were fine. But there's lots of people that never travel. And there's lots of British people who never leave the cities that they were born in, never mind travel abroad. And so lots of Caribbean people never traveled back, never went anywhere. And so when this law was passed, ostensibly against people coming in, on boats and so on, so they wouldn't be able to access services, it then impacted on people who lived here and never had to have any documents. Now suddenly they were told that, if you want to keep your job, you have to prove you have the right to be here. And I think, well, how can I prove that? And they couldn't. And so hundreds of them were deported.
Can you imagine?
Put in detention.
Can you imagine?
Weren't able to access the NHS.
Oh,
and this is,
can you imagine? I'm responding
crazy.
Emotionally. Forgive me, Anthony. It's responding emotionally. But I've met people who've gone through that experience, the indignity. Go ahead. Yes.
And there are people still now who are in limbo because they still haven't had that status back, because they never had any documents, and they still don't have any documents. And the British Nationality Act is telling them that unless they meet these criteria, they won't get any documents. And we've dealt with them. And, we get told that we're going to have discretion, still can't get the documents. And that's why we're proposing this Windrush Act, because it would sweep away these criteria for that group of people. It's not opening the floodgates. It's not saying everybody from anywhere in the world, we won't have these criteria. Just those from the British West Indies who are part of this cohort of people who are in this country and are still suffering. And we need some relief for those people. And what I'm finding is that the MPs are putting the blame on the Home Office. Yeah, the Home Office were tough on people, but that's what you employ agents to do. The Home Office is just an agent of the government. The government and Parliament make the law, and the Home Office enforce it. If you don't want those people to be subject to the law, then you need to make another law that says they are not, and then the Home Office will get off their backs. And that's why I'm saying, after talking to the Home Office and seeing what they're trying to do, and going there and seeing that they're just people like us doing a job, but being told to enforce that law. So, it's like the police. You can't say to the police, "Oh, don't arrest people," when they've committed, an offence. Well, if you don't want us to arrest for that offence, stop it being an offence in law.
Absolutely.
And that's where we've come to with the Windrush Act.
Okay. What I want to do now, then, because now we've getting closer to the independent report and clarifying the principles on which the Windrush Act would be founded. It's really now
Hmm.
to understand what's been happening in previous years, because we now have a new government, which I'll get
Hmm.
onto in a moment. But I want to just focus on what the old government attempted to do. I just want you to mention and describe why Wendy Williams was brought in to a review of the performance of the Home Office. Why was she contracted? And you just summarize the report that she compiled.
So once there started to be reports in the media, Amelia Gentleman from The Guardian was key in this, that people were facing these difficulties. The government was embarrassed because at the time it was the Commonwealth heads of government, and the Queen was
Yes.
planning to hand on some duties to Prince Charles, and they wanted everything to be sweet, with the Commonwealth leaders. But here were these terrible stories of people being put in detention and being deported. So Theresa May apologised, and I saw
Oh, I
the
may have
Prime
the
Minister.
apologies here for you. Hold on, Anthony. I
Mm,
may have the apology. Let's see if it works. You never know, it may not work, but let's try this. Let's see if it works. Can you
mhm.
tell me if you can hear this? The Home Office, hostile environment. Prime Minister Theresa May, Prime Minister between 2016 to 2019, has apologised to the Caribbean heads of government for the treatment of the Windrush citizens and promised that no one would be deported. The then Prime Minister told a meeting with Caribbean leaders she wanted to dispel any impression that her government was, in some sense, clamping down on Commonwealth citizens, particularly those from the Caribbean.
On Tuesday, I met with Caribbean leaders, where I gave an absolute commitment that the UK government will do whatever it takes, including where appropriate payment of compensation, to resolve the anxieties and problems which some of the Windrush generation have suffered. These people are British, they are part of us, they helped to build Britain, and we are all the stronger for their contributions.
Well, there you have it, there, Anthony. There you have it. Her
Mm.
own words, not
I
my
think,
words.
yeah. So it
Yes, she
sounds
said it.
fine when she says these people are British,
Mm-hmm.
but when you get into the detail, you find the
Yeah.
devil.
Yes. Go
And that
ahead. Explain.
there,
Explain.
there, there, there are these criteria, as I mentioned, from Schedule
Mm-hmm.
1 that says, you have
Yes.
to be in 5 years, you have to have speak English and all the
Mm-hmm.
rest of it.
Yeah.
You have to intend to make this your home. If you've been out of the country, you've got a problem. And so people who can't jump those hurdles are still in
Yes.
limbo. So,
Yes.
but what the Windrush Act does, it makes Theresa May honest in that when she says they are British, the law will say that now,
Mm-hmm.
and it would make her statement a bit more honest.
Okay. Wendy Williams.
The
Let's go back to Wendy
Yeah,
Williams, if I
yeah.
may.
So just as Theresa May was saying there that she
Mm-hmm.
apologised and would pay compensation. Um, the government launched an inquiry into what caused the Windrush scandal, and Wendy Williams was appointed to get to the bottom of things. And she went around the country. She came to here in Manchester. We did consultation events. She went into the Home Office, got all interviewed, hundreds of staff, and took about 2 years. And she then issued a report called the Windrush Lessons Learned Review, and it made 30 recommendations
Mm-hmm.
that the Home Office and the government needed to, address, and they
Yes.
accepted them all.
Yes.
Recommendation one was that they should apologise and accept
Yes.
that people who the African Caribbean community had been harmed. It specifically says the African Caribbean community. It doesn't mention the Commonwealth or
No.
50
Mm-hmm.
other nations. It just says
Mm-hmm.
the African Caribbean, because predominantly, let's face it,
Yes.
we were in the firing line at the time,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so the review made those recommendations. But then what the last government did was says, hang on a minute, we're not going to, after accepting that they would do all these things and
Mm-hmm.
getting Wendy Williams to sign off that they were doing their continuous improvement plan, as they call it. and the other government started to renege on the 30
Yes.
um, recommendation that they'd previously accepted. So one of them was that they'd have what they call a migrants commissioner,
Yes.
and
Yes.
then another one was about reconciliation events, and so people felt, well, you're slipping here.
Mm.
They scrapped the Windrush unit in the
That's
Home
right.
Office that was
Hmm.
looking at the continuous improvement plan. So it seemed as if they were backsliding. And what this new government has come in and said is that, right, okay, we're going to have a commissioner, but we're going to call it the Windrush Commissioner rather than the Migrants Commissioner.
Hmm.
And we're going to have this Windrush unit back. And we want to know what you think about reconciliation events and so on. So this was
Can I
part of a meeting that we just had with
forgive me,
Wales.
Anthony, because you've jumped forward because you talk about the current government. I want to make sure we get it
Hmm.
right in terms of what this new government, the Labour government, has pledged. And what I'm going to do, if
Mm,
I may, I'm just going to read out to you what was pledged by the now Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer.
yeah.
Now, Sir Keir Starmer pledged a fundamental reset to promote respect and dignity for the Windrush generation and made plans to prevent such a scandal from being repeated. His plans include appointing a Windrush commissioner, opening up access to the compensation scheme, and re-establishing the Windrush unit in the Home Office as part of an effort to improve the relationship between the government and the Windrush generation. And he then goes on to say, he accused the Conservatives, the Tories, of having presided over a failing compensation scheme, the dismantling of the Major Changes programme, and a complete unwillingness to learn the lessons of the Windrush scandal. He said, justice has taken far too long for the Windrush community. A government that I lead won't let this happen again. Where the Conservatives, where the Tories have dragged their feet, I am determined to get money out the door to compensate those who've been failed by the state. And lastly, he then added, the Windrush generation embodies the best of Britain, determination, spirit, public spirit, graft. But instead of being thanked, they've been badly mistreated. A Labour government will offer a fundamental reset moment for the Windrush generation with respect and dignity at its very core. I'm quoting him word for word. Now,
Mm,
you're now engaging the new Labour government, okay? And I know
yes.
you've met with the Home Secretary and other officials.
Yeah.
How's it been so far? Just tell us, how have you experienced? You're
Well,
laughing already.
because it's all the same. Because I'm saying again,
Okay,
those are
okay.
fine words.
Indeed,
But
indeed.
just like with Theresa May, in order
Mm-hmm,
to make Keir Starmer honest, you
mm-hmm.
have to change the law. All
Yes,
these problems have been brought about by
a
changes in the
change in the
law. Our
law.
rights have
Yes,
been whittled away. And
yes.
until he gets up and starts saying, we are going to legislate for a Windrush Act, you shouldn't. You should take all that he says, just like what Theresa May said. She sounded very nice, and she sounded, that she would be
There
very.
you are.
Um,
There you are shaking
yes.
Yvette
Yeah,
Cooper's hands. There
yeah.
you are.
I was
And
very
she's the Home
pleased when she.
Secretary. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
I was very pleased that she announced 1.5 million pounds for the
Mm-hmm.
next 3 years for support in advocacy. So groups around the
Yes.
country that do the sort of work that we do will
Well
now
done,
get
Yvette.
some
Well
support.
done. Well done.
So
Yes.
for 6
Mm-hmm.
years,
Mm-hmm.
we've been doing this like practically voluntary
That's right.
to make sure that our communities wouldn't be left short.
Mm-hmm.
And she also talked about the reset as well.
Yes.
But
Yes.
and she listened quite intently to what I had to say about the Windrush Act.
Indeed.
We
Indeed.
we developed a brief. My son, who set up a company called Scorch Studio,
Mm-hmm.
overnight created this briefing pack of what we wanted to say, and so we're able to deliver it to this meeting because we didn't know about this meeting until very short notice. So
Okay.
we were able to present to her, the briefing for what we wanted within the Windrush Act. She
Hmm.
kindly said she would pass it on to her citizenship and migrants minister, Silma Malhotra,
Yes.
Sima Malhotra, and we will see where that goes. We had a meeting with Home Office officials again this week on
Hmm.
Wednesday, and
Hmm.
again, we were talking about the um, the historical roots of the Windrush scandal, and we
Yes.
noted there that within it, the points that you read out about that,
Hmm.
the 1962, 68, and
Yes.
71 Immigration
Yes.
Acts were designed to
Yes.
keep out black and brown people. And
Correct.
so
Mm-hmm.
we were pointing out that this new law that was brought in 2022,
Mm-hmm.
it should have implications for that. In that they're saying that if there are historical unfair legislation, then it could be grounds for the Home Secretary to exercise discretion.
Just
But
yes.
how the government at the moment interprets unfair historical legislation is in cases where if your parents weren't married and you couldn't get your citizenship, then that would be considered unfair historical legislation. And so
Yes.
the Home
Yes.
Secretary would be able to use discretion and give you your citizenship if
Mm.
your parents weren't married at the time. But we were pointing out that, how can you publish a report that said these laws were designed to keep out black and brown people? You say in your report that they were racist, and then you try to tell us that they were fair legislation. They must be unfair legislation too. And that means that all the people that apply for their citizenship that was impacted by these laws, it should be grounds for the Home Secretary to exercise discretion. And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
therefore, they wouldn't
Yes.
be given the runaround that they're being given at the moment. I mean, that's one way of dealing with it. The other
Mm.
way is the Windrush Act, which would just sweep away those hurdles in statute.
Thank you. And if I may, I'm going to put this on the screen now. You can see it now. Then, so of course, the Wendy Williams report set out the performance of the Home Office. Okay, and made a series of recommendations. Okay, and we're now talking about what 4 or 5 years ago now. Is that right? I think it's about right. Okay.
Yeah,
Subsequently, a further report was produced, a further independent report that the previous government sat on. Okay,
yeah.
and what I'm really proud is that the incoming Labour government published on the 24th of September. And the independent report is called The Historical Roots of the Windrush Scandal. This is an
Mm,
independent research report. It's really
mm,
is important. And those of you who wish to read it, you put it into your search engine, look for this report, Home Office, The Historical Roots of the Windrush Scandal, and it will take you to this link to the Home Office page, and you can download the report for free. I say that by way of setting the context, because I have got to tell you, I've not seen a report for some time. Well, Wendy Williams, of course, was a watershed, but this particular report was pretty emphatic, unreserved in its wording, and I'm really proud of the politicians involved. And I suspect there are some Conservative Tory politicians who were involved in the commissioning of the report. So I've got to compliment
mhm.
them as well. Why? Because the language is explicit. And what I'm going to do now, if I may, Anthony, is just put it on the screen and to make it clear. This is in the report. Can I just magnify it? I'll magnify it if I can. That should make it better for those who are watching online. Okay. So this is in the report, and I'm going to read as part of it because it's important for you all to listen. What's actually in the Home Office report, and it says, and this is, I believe, what's this page? What's that page? That's page 5 of the report. There you are. Okay, and it says as follows: the These are the general themes, but there's also specific lessons to be learned from an investigation of the historical roots of the Windrush scandals. These are as follows. The Windrush scandal was caused by a failure to recognise that changes in immigration and citizenship law in Britain since 1948 had affected black people in the United Kingdom differently than other racial or ethnic groups. As a result, the experience of Black Britain's communities, of the Home Office, of the law, and of life in the United Kingdom have been fundamentally different from those of white communities. 2. Major immigration legislation in 1962, 1968, and 71 was designed to reduce the proportion of people living in the United Kingdom who did not have white skin. This is in the Home Office report. It's making it clear, it's in black and white. Then the third observation they make. The relationship between the Home Office and the organisation set up to deal with race relations was dysfunctional in the second half of the 20th century. The work of various governmental bodies in combating discrimination in the United Kingdom was separate from the task given to the Home Office to reduce immigration. This led to a paradoxical situation in which immigration policy assumed that too many immigrants from a minority ethnic background were bad for society, but race relations policy promoted the idea of racial equality. Wow, that's in the report.
Yes.
It's pretty emphatic language, isn't it? Pretty
It is.
emphatic.
And
Go
we still have that dilemma today in that, you know,
ahead.
we have employment diversity and inclusion, and people are debating and grappling with that. But you know, in the media, it's still promoting, "Oh, we're being assaulted by immigrants coming over on boats," and
That's right.
you know, what's the
Paradoxical.
numbers you want? What's the
Yes.
numbers you want to allow in? And you know, that
Right.
massive debate is still going on. In the meantime,
Yes.
we're expecting the British public to be thinking, "Well, you know, how do we see ourselves, and you know, are we supposed to be against these people or for these
Or
people? Are
not.
we to
Or
exclude them or not? And who's an immigrant and who isn't? And you know, who are these Windrush people anyway?" Do you know what I mean? So
yes.
it's just a complete mess. And what I'm saying is that the act that we're proposing answers a lot of these issues, because as part of
Agreed.
the act, what we're saying is that the Cabinet Office at the moment collects data on race disparities. So
Yes.
the design of these immigration laws being racist, we believe, did not, that attitude didn't only persist in immigration.
Mm-hmm.
We say the same mindset persisted in education,
Yes.
because you had people being declared through law as educationally subnormal, and they were
Indeed.
deported too.
Indeed.
So
Yes.
we need
Can you
to have a
imagine?
look in that cupboard to see what other, you know, skeletons there are. And
Mhm.
even in health, we know about disparities of black
Yes.
women giving birth to children.
Yes.
We
Yes.
know about the medication, you know, that all the painkillers that they're not given, and so on, because they're
Mhm.
thought to be able to endure pain more than their
Yes.
white counterparts, and
Can
crazy
you
stuff
imagine?
like that. But
Yes.
we're saying that with this Windrush Act, what we need is a duty on public bodies to tackle these racist disparities. It's one thing getting the data and providing us with the information, providing
Mhm.
us with the report that says, yeah, there were racist design laws.
Mhm.
Yes, we have these statistics to show the harm that it's caused. And then you
Mhm.
sit there and fold your hands. No,
Yes.
we want
No.
to see
Mhm. Mhm.
action taken to reduce disparities. So what the Windrush Act would do would put a duty on public bodies to tackle these disparities. They don't have to follow any prescriptive way of doing it. They would have, like for example, equal opportunities policy. You'd have a race disparity policy, and then each individual organisation or group or whatever will come up with, because you know, people's ideas can be you know, inventive when you want to, you know, change things, if you let people come up with
Yes.
the ideas as
Yes.
to how to do it. So the Act
Yes.
would just say, look, you have a duty to tackle these numbers, but we would rely on the Cabinet Office to collect the data as they're doing now, and then report back each year as to how we're doing. So, we wouldn't have a case where people just sat around and talked all year. Each year
Yes.
we'd have,
We see.
to look at the data, see what improvements we're making, and see where we need to take further action. And then, as well as that, we'd have what we call in a Commonwealth community cohesion fund, because what these racist immigration laws have done is broken up a lot of families. They've
Yes.
created disparities
Yes.
and sort of disrupted communities. I mean, look at what's going on in the black community with all the
Yes.
various killings and God
Yes.
knows what else
Yes.
is going on.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's all connected as part of that. So what it would do then, at the moment, when the government first announced the compensation scheme, it said that they'd pay out between 200 million and 500 million over 2 years. It's now
Yes.
been what, 5 years, and they're patting themselves on the back for saying that they've nearly paid out 100 million. So what we're saying is something wrong
There you
with the
go.
design of the scheme, and what I'm
Yes.
saying is that it's the law behind the scheme that's
Yes.
the problem, not the Home Office implementing the scheme. It's the
Mm.
laws that are behind it, and who makes the laws? Parliament.
Yes.
So why aren't we
Absolutely.
asking the MPs, why aren't they changing the law? When Keir Starmer comes out and makes his announcements and saying we have a reset, let's reset the law to what it should be,
Okay,
so
hold
that we
there, hold
do
there.
have the safest.
We're on the same page. Don't worry, we're on the same page. Now, are you
Mhm.
okay with taking a few callers if I open the line for about 5, 10 minutes?
I just want to mention one more thing,
Okay, go
and
ahead.
that
Yeah.
is to deal with the tackling of these disparities within
Mhm.
the scheme, the Windrush Act. We
Mhm.
have what's called burning work. I've discussed this with you before, but
You
there are
have,
5
yes.
themes within that. So there's
Mhm.
community cohesion, where we get all the groups around that can bring communities together, tackle the issues around the status and so on. And I've talked to you about events that we can do.
Yes.
There's also criminal justice. We want to tackle the disparities there, community groups, and we're saying that these 5 themes, community cohesion, criminal justice, health, education, and work.
Mhm.
We need to change the law that allows the Home Office to draw down funds to pay compensation, so that organizations working in these fields can get long-term funding, 10,
Mhm.
20-year funding, to tackle these
Yes.
intractable problems that has been
Yes.
with us for generation to generation. The issues around education and being excluded from school. We need to know what are the dynamics there and put things in place, strategies in place that could tackle that over the long term. And the Windrush Act would resource that under
Agreed.
burning work.
Agreed. Makes perfect sense to me. I'm opening up the phone lines now, and I can ask audience, please to wait to the last moment to call. The number to call, and you can interact directly with Anthony Brown. You can hear his passion. He is a Windrush pioneer, but it's taking this matter on head on. And we are making progress. We're giving him our 100% support. But if you wish to interact with him whilst the phone lines are open, I say again, please don't wait to the very last moment. The number to call if you're in the UK, or we have a caller on the line already.
Please wait for the last moment to
Uh,
call.
uh,
The
uh,
Hello.
number to call.
yeah,
You can.
can I ask you to turn
Hello.
off your device in the background? We can hear the echo. Turn off your device first of all.
You mean turn
So,
it down, not turn
yeah,
off.
turn it down. Yeah, turn it down, please. Yeah, turn it down.
1 second. 1 second. See, I'm
Thank you.
not young. I'm an old 60 years old woman. All this
Okay.
technology.
Uh,
I think I've done it
that's it.
now. Yes.
That's better. Yes.
Yes.
Can I take your name first of all, my elder? Can you give us?
It's very simple. My name is simple. Councillor Pauline George. Very
Oh.
English. Colonial mentality.
Okay, I
Pre-colonial
understood.
mentality.
Hmm.
Councillor Pauline George. Oh
I,
God,
I,
it come up
I,
again. Would you stop coming up you this thing? I turned it off.
oh yes, it's if you mute it, if
Okay.
you turn down the
I
volume,
wish
that's
my
it.
son is going to mute it for me. I don't know
There
how
you
to
go.
do all these things.
Okay,
Even though I'm a counselor.
that's all
Then
right.
okay, I think I've turned it off now. Maybe
There
I
you
will
go.
not hear
That's
myself
perfect. That's
again.
perfect.
Yes,
Do you have a
yes, yes.
question? Can I ask you? Do you have a question for Anthony? Do you have a question for Anthony?
Yes, I do.
Go
I
ahead.
do, because a lot of people do not know about this Windrush thing. My question is, or my question or my comment is, can he tell everyone that Windrush is not only about Jamaicans, it's not only about West Indies, it's all about Africans. I'm even putting it generally about black people, because a lot of people don't know their rights. I'm a councillor in Lambeth, in the London Borough of Lambeth. I'm sorry where you are. I say we are one. I say we are one of the best borough in England, not even in London.
Right.
So because we have a lot of Windrush generation here, and there are these black people, the Africans, who think, oh, it's only for Jamaican. Even there are some West Indians who do not know that Windrush is not only about Jamaican. Please.
Okay, Councillor, can I ask you just to hold there? So that's a very clear question. Does Windrush only apply to people from the Caribbean, Anthony?
So if you were if you came to the United Kingdom
I
before
wish
the
I
first
can hear you,
31st
because I've turned it off. I can't hear him.
You can't hear. Oh, all right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can't hear him because he told me to turn it off. I'm
okay.
I'm a 66 years old woman
who
is trying to be like the young one.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
We'll keep trying.
If you can give your contact to Councillor Martin, then I can contact you and we can come and specifically hold an event at your
in
council
Lambeth.
offices or somewhere else where the community that you want to engage, the African community, we will come and we will help spread the word, and we will help them with their application forms. The scheme is open to anyone from anywhere in the world, not only Africa, not only the Caribbean, but anywhere in the world that came to the UK before the 31st of December 1988.
Did you hear that, Councillor?
I didn't because I'm very old-fashioned. I did not. Tell me what he said, because what I did was to turn off the other phone.
Okay, all right. What he said is that it is the Windrush Scandal is named after an old ship that, of course, travelled between Britain and the Caribbean.
I know that.
It's simply a name, but in fact, if you are affected, if you or your parents were here either prior to your country becoming independent, in my case, as Jamaica became independent in 1962, I've lived here
and in
since...
my case, Nigerians become independent in 1960.
In 1960, indeed. And when did you arrive in this country? What year did you arrive?
1974.
74. Now then, that's interesting. Yes. I wonder, based upon what... So, first of all, just to answer your question directly. So, yes, regardless if you were part of the British Commonwealth, as it were, and you arrived...
if you're from anywhere in the world. So people from Italy have been getting their status through the Windrush scheme. So from anywhere in the world, if you came before the 31st of December 1988, you are eligible to apply under a Windrush scheme.
Okay, sorry. What he's saying is, forgive me, Councillor, what he's saying is that it applies to anyone in the world, and if you've been prevented from gaining your status, despite the fact you have a legal right to be in this country, you can apply for compensation under the Windrush scheme. So
you can also apply for your status as well if you haven't got it.
I'm a British citizen, a bona fide British citizen. I got my British passport.
I understand.
As you know, if I'm not, I will not be a councillor. I'm asking for all
I understand
people,
you. So, Councillor, what I'm going to do with you, Councillor, yes. I'm going to, yes. I've got your number here. I will speak to you immediately after this podcast, okay? We will go through this together, and we together will put on an event for residents in both Lambeth and Southwark, okay, so that we could bring to them the facts and the details here, how they can apply first of all for their stay if they have not been able to regularize their stay, and secondly, where it's appropriate, compensation under the Windrush compensation scheme. Is that all right? If I contact you, thank you. My pleasure.
Can I say thank you? Hang on. Can I say thank you so much? I'm going now for a campaign as I'm a Labour councillor. I will not be back until 1 o'clock. I'm going
Not a
for the
problem.
campaign. I
I'll
just
talk to you after
decided
that.
to listen to you. I'm late
Thank you.
for the campaign because of you. So I'm
Thank
charging
you.
you £10 for being late.
It's always that's all I ever do is pay bills. Thank you indeed, Councillor. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Well done. Well done.
Pleasure.
I'm so
Pleasure.
proud of you. You
Thank you.
are
Thank you.
just too great. You're a great man. Well
Thank
done.
you. You're so kind. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
You are.
I'll wait for your call this
Yes,
afternoon, please.
you will hear
Sorry,
from
it's a
me.
guest.
You have a
Yes,
promise
thank
in
you. About
public.
2.
There you go.
Yes,
Bye bye.
about 2 o'clock, please call
Yeah,
me.
about 2
Thank you
o'clock
so
will do.
much.
There you are. She's
Thank
making
you.
sure. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank
Bye bye.
you.
There you
So
go.
what
Wow.
happens?
It is well. It is well. And we are neighbours, and we're
Yeah.
both Labour councillors, and it
Yeah.
provides an opportunity for us to combine our resources so that we can hold the event which you alluded to. In fact, you talked about this going out into the community to spread the word. Explain, give the benefit of the audience
Yes,
what you mean by that.
we're calling it Building a Better Future event.
Mm-hmm.
So we're saying that, we've got this scandal.
Mm-hmm.
We now have a potential solution in the Windrush Act.
Mm-hmm.
But whilst we're promoting that, why
Mm-hmm.
don't we get together and help those people who still haven't got their status sorted out, but also look at all the other knock-on effects this has had in terms of criminal justice, in terms of health, in terms of work, in
Yeah,
terms
absolutely.
of education,
Yes.
and
Yes.
in terms of community cohesion. And
Mm-hmm.
let's continue that work that we've been doing throughout the generations. We call it burning work because we do it with a passion, don't we?
Yes.
We
Yes.
make sure that somebody's in trouble with the law. We try to make sure they don't get into trouble. If
Yes.
somebody needs work and they're discriminated against at work, we try to help with that. So
Mm-hmm.
we can form groups now, or we can support groups that
Right.
are working in these areas. And we want to create the framework by
Good.
hosting these events so that when we get the Windrush Act in place,
Mm-hmm.
then resources from the compensation fund will be able to go into these groups to repair the harm that has been done to these
Absolutely.
communities. That is the real
Absolutely. Yes.
basis of this campaign, building a better future, so that we protect
Yes.
future
Yes.
generations from this kind of impact.
Absolutely. Can I just, again, just a final call out for those who wish to call and speak directly to Anthony Brown. The number to call, and if you in the UK, it's 0208 133 5616. If you're outside the UK, you remove the first zero, is +44. So I repeat the number. Last chance, it's 0208 133 5616. If you wish to interact with Anthony Brown directly. I know a number of you have indicated you wish to, but don't wait to the last moment or when I close the phone and complain to me thereafter. Okay, there you are. I've said it. If I may now, the audience, of course, I can tell by the interactions I've had thus far, have found the information you've shared to be illuminating and provides a clear basis for us to move forward. Okay. If they want to talk to you, how can they make contact with you, Anthony, outside of this podcast?
So they can email me at anthony.brown
Okay.
at wdlegal.co.uk.
Right. Okay, I'll take that one down as well. What I will do for those of you who watch the recordings, I will insert in the comment area contact details for Anthony Brown. Okay. And you welcome inquiries where members of the audience, whether individuals or institutions, want to join with you to promote and ensure the Windrush Act becomes a reality. Am I right?
That's right. Because the thing that I say is that, as I was saying earlier, this is now our home. It's,
Yes.
we can spend time saying, oh, well, it's Conservatives that did this and Labour's going to do
Oh,
that.
I've got another call on the line. I've got another call
Yeah,
on the
one
line.
second. Yeah, it's
Okay.
for all of us to now pitch in and sort this mess out.
Agreed. I see caller with number ending 3123. Good morning. Can I have your name, please?
Good morning, Martin.
Good morning to you. Oh, I'm the motivator here, but it is well. You've been listening, obviously. Do you have a question for Anthony Brown? Do you have a question?
Yeah, I don't really have a question, but I just want to contribute based on what he said so far. Regarding the treatment of black people and people from the Caribbean in particular. And also the name Harold Wilson came up.
Yes.
So when listening to him, I hear everything, everywhere that there is evil, you find the name of Harold Wilson inside. So, and the name of Queen Victoria also surfaced, which means it is a premeditated agenda they have, because when they came to Africa, in the 16th century, when Victoria came to Africa, that is when they created this nonsense called Nigeria. You see this people called Nigeria. That's when Nigeria was created. They created something and said protectorate.
1885, yes.
So that is the genesis of Nigeria and the problem they created.
Yes.
And Harold Wilson, being a Labour Prime Minister, was a former MP of Highton or Knowsley Council. He has been everywhere committing evil. He came to Biafra land and the K children. He said that the British policy against Biafra will not change.
How
so
Wilson said that, did he?
Against Biafra.
Right. Okay. Go ahead. Yes. Go ahead.
British policy against Biafra during Nigerian Biafra war will not change because they don't know what Biafra is going to be. Since Biafra is dancing towards the communists, with the vast resources Biafrans have, they don't know what Biafra will be in future. So for Biafra to be free, it is a policy for British government made that they are not going to allow Biafrans to be free. This is their mindset. This is their law.
And if I may, caller, the underlying treatment of people who are not white has come out in this most recent report that we've mentioned, with the independent report into the historical impact of these changes in legislation. I would urge you to read that report, but your point is well made, that this is, as Anthony's also alluded to, if it's happening in immigration, it's happening in health, it's happening in education, it's of course happened in foreign policy as well. And what you're highlighting is the impact of this mindset on foreign policy, British foreign policy, and specifically on Nigeria. Look, I'm not going to go down to discuss Nigeria today, but I will return to Nigeria, as you know, as a key subject in a podcast, not next Saturday, but the following Saturday. And you're more than welcome to call in or actively participate in that town hall discussion. But today, what I'm going to do, I'm going to let you go now and say thank you for the call. Thank you for listening. Spread the word, and we will make sure that together we make the difference. Is that okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Before I go, I want to say that what our brother said, I thank him so much for the effort they are making, because all of us are suffering it. Wherever you go, you see that very treatment is everywhere. Why I left London is because of the same treatment. They refused to give me a job that I was overqualified.
There you go.
TFL. So the man in charge of that job is an Irishman. He went and brought his brothers and sisters and cousins and nephews, everybody fixed in the position, while 7 positions, while I have every qualification they needed. I even take permanent staff to site. The end of the day, those who doesn't got the qualification got the job.
I hear you.
It is there. It is everywhere.
It is everywhere.
So I thank you for the job you're doing. Keep it up.
Thank you very much. And thank you for listening. And thank you for your call today. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Right. That's, again, another example of the impact of the attitude that has pervaded British society for generations, and one could argue it's a inevitable, almost inevitable result of having an empire. And in order to retain that empire, this mindset of superiority comes to the fore. I think that's. Go ahead.
But it is changing. It is
Yes,
changing, and
agreed, without a shadow of a doubt.
we need to embrace that change, and we need to encourage that change. And if I can just give you a tiny example of the changes that I've seen, when we
Good. Yes.
first took the Home Office to court,
Mm-hmm.
and the previous minister, Kevin Foster, I think his name was, immigration minister, said that maybe I should go along to the Home Office operations team and to see how they were managing the compensation claims. And so a colleague
Yes.
of mine and I went up, and we were wondering what sort of reception we were going to get. And they brought out all the staff, and we saw that. Oh, they're like, of course, there's a diverse community of people working there, and they gave us sandwiches for lunch. And
Ah,
we're thinking, hang on a minute,
okay. Okay. These are all
is
good
this the
people.
Home
Yeah.
Office?
Mm.
But we took them over to our place, and we said, look, why don't you come over and meet with us? And relationships developed. And last Wednesday, when they came over, last Wednesday when we met with them in Liverpool, they had curry goat rice and peas.
Oh my gosh! Really?
So what I'm saying is changes are afoot.
I agree. I agree. And yes, and it is, that's a really important point, and I want to
Yeah, and the
reiterate.
relationship is building basically.
Yes, it is changed. There's change very much in every sphere of British society, and will make Britain a stronger, far more economically speaking, powerful nation as a result. If the changes that are anticipated come to fruition. Britain
Yeah.
is on a positive course. And I must say the borough that I live in and the council that I represent, most certainly an example of um, leading edge behaviour. Actions speak louder than words. We put in place policies, but as you say, it's how these policies are implemented. And I'm really pleased with the leadership here in Southwark, both political and officer leadership. We have an outstanding chief executive and wonderful
Yeah.
sets of senior directors here who are very much glued in and believe and understand our equality strategy, so that every penny that is spent in this borough is spent as if it's our own personal money. And it truly is a people-powered borough. Absolutely, absolutely right.
That's
So there's
fantastic.
change on the horizon.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And we must highlight, where there's wrongdoing or where there's discrimination and where there's race
Yes.
disparities. But also,
Yeah.
when people are doing the right thing, we need
Yes.
to highlight that too, so
Acknowledge.
that others may emulate what they see, those people are doing to make progress. So that's what
Agreed.
I'm trying to do. I'm trying to say that yes, we've had a horrible past, but what sort of future do we want? And when do we
Yes.
start building that future? I say it's now. And my sons are involved. All our children should be involved because they need to understand what are the issues that are being tackled and bring some new ideas and fresh impetus and energy to it.
What I'm going to do now, because we're almost out of time, just put on the screen, there you are. There's your website address, WD Legal. It's www.wdlegal.co.uk. There's an hashtag, of course, Windrush Act Now. If you go through to the website, you can, of course, send a direct message to Anthony. And Anthony, can I ask you, whilst I've got this up on the screen, just to repeat the email address, which I don't have for some reason. Repeat your email
So
address.
it's Anthony with an H, Anthony .Brown 60. Sorry, Anthony Brown at
Yes.
WD Legal,
Yes.
WDLEGAL,
Yes.
legal.co.uk. That's
Perfect.
the email. And then our website is wdlegal.co.uk.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And what I'm heartened by when I listen to you speaking is that the future is bright. There is no reason
Definitely.
for men and women, young people, elders and others to feel depressed. We together are working together, and this issue doesn't just simply affect people who are non-white. You know,
No,
it has a.
it's
Go ahead.
broad effect. Everybody has to pitch in. We have
Hmm.
another initiative with the Home Office where we said to
Hmm.
them, look, it's one thing giving people compensation, but there's harm throughout the community. How can we
Yes.
do something about that?
Hmm.
And the government civil servants are given 5 days a year that they can volunteer in their communities. And
Oh,
we says,
right.
well, why isn't anybody volunteering in our community? And
Yes. Yes.
they put it around, a notice around the Home Office, and 18 people volunteered. And what we've done is we've identified a group of young people who need support and mentoring, and we've created a mentoring program called Spark Mentoring. So some of the Windrush compensation scheme staff, not only are they working to process the applications, they're also working to support some of the people from our communities in terms of a personal development plan in terms of the direction they want to go in their careers and so on and
Hmm.
so forth. So
Hmm.
it's really developing that
Powerful.
relationship where people can look at ideas.
Yes.
It's not one idea that's going to do it. It's all these thousands of ideas that will come up that will then
Yes. Yes.
help to rebuild our communities. Because what we're saying is, this is now our home. If you were living in a home, you'd expect your brother to help out with the younger ones. You'd expect, your parents to provide some sort of guidance and support and resources. And so there's action in the home for everybody. But the home must also reflect some of your interests and your culture and so
Hmm.
on. And you
Hmm.
must feel safe and secure in that home. So
Yes.
these are concepts that everybody can understand, and if we work together, we should be able to build a better future, and that's what we want to do with this campaign.
What I've got to do is just put the last slide on the screen, and this is for you, of course, Anthony, and thank you for all your work. But I just want to say this.
Hmm.
We're calling for the Windrush Act, and I'm going to use your term, the restitution. Since
Yes.
1948, the citizenship of those who arrived on the Windrush and that of their descendants has been repeatedly eroded, particularly by the 1971 Immigration Act and by the current hostile environment. This erosion leaves many within the African Caribbean cohort finding themselves British in all but name, and therefore having to prove their Britishness when it was Britain that eroded and undermined their Britishness in the first place. The Windrush Act fully restores the Britishness to African Caribbeans and others. Absolutely. Well said. Well said. And well put together, if I may say so. What's your
Thank you.
closing word for the audience before we close with you?
It's now is the time.
Yes.
We've got to rise to the occasion.
Mm-hmm.
For years, we have not had a direction or had hope. But I
Mm-hmm.
believe that with the Windrush Act, it gives us direction and it gives
Mm-hmm.
us hope. And,
Mm-hmm.
we can build a better future and protect our future generations that they don't, fall foul of the various laws that can be enacted from time to time that will erode their status and their citizenship.
In other words, it's possible. In other words, change is possible. In other words.
Most definitely. I mean, this is a
Mm-hmm.
democratic country. You can engage with the MPs. You just need to know what to ask them. If you don't ask for anything, they won't give you anything. And so a lot of the times we don't know what to ask for. But now we can say to them, look, have you heard about this Windrush Act? We would like you to ask the Home Secretary to bring a bill before Parliament to pass. And that is quite direct. And that's what MPs are there to do, to make law. We ask them to do all sorts of things. And, the things that they go to Parliament for, we don't ask them to do. Ask them to
Absolutely.
make a law that will benefit
Yes.
us.
Thank you. Look, listen to this. Here we go. Let's get this going for you. There you go. Applause, 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 applause for you. We want to recognize you. There you go. Wow. Even more for you. Oh my gosh. Even more. Oh, yes. More for you, Anthony. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Keep it up. Keep it up. Keep it up. More for you, Anthony. More for you. There you go. Okay. Okay, I better stop that now. Okay,
Yeah.
having too much fun.
Continue the burning work.
Thank you. Anthony Brown, thank you. You have our unreserved support. If you need to communicate with the community, our doors are always open. And I will continue with the audience to give support to the establishment of the Windrush Act. You just need to tell us what we need to do, and we will follow your lead. I know that you work with other Windrush organizations, the Windrush National Organization and others. I know you work in concert, but
Yes.
together we can all make the difference. Anthony
Most
Brown,
definitely.
Anthony Brown, thank you for your time this morning. And I've been slightly longer, but I believe this was time well spent. I know many have benefited from the information you've shared. Good day
Thank
to
you.
you. And stay well. Stay well. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Wow. Good morning. Wow. That was something else.